Well, excuse me for believing that this movie would actually be about Gordon and the Whip Peter photograph and not your everyday typical slave movie that we get every year. Because that's what you said, Will Smith. You said verbatim, this is not a slave movie. This is definitely a slave movie. And not a good one at that. Guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tyra here with another struggle review, here to discuss Emancipation. Now, this is a brand new movie available in theaters and on Apple TV, and it stars Will Smith. Now, before we get into all things a slave movie, but make it Will Smith, I need you guys to drop down and subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'm going to give you guys a moment to do that, and then we're going to come back and discuss. Boy, a little cinematography goes a long way for y'all. Y'all will be out here giving movies all kinds of praise that they do not deserve. This was not, and I repeat, not a good movie. Argue in the comments.
Go back.
Hopefully subscribe to see more of me. Let's get into this movie. Now, I found myself a little excited about this movie. Unlike most, I could give a damn about, the Chris Rock slap. Though it was wrong, I had every intention of watching this film, assuming that we would get a completely different narrative on slave movies than we already have. I know a lot of us are tired of getting the exact same narrative when it comes to slave movies. They depict the same things, the same sequences, the same, torture-like events, the same grim outlook. I'm not one of those people who feel like, slavery movies just shouldn't exist at all. They do serve a purpose. They are informative. There are, a certain sector of people that would just love to act like slavery never happened or that it was a choice, dumb stuff like that. So these movies do serve a purpose. And I thought the purpose of this movie was to really shine a light on the Gordon Whip Peter photograph. Even if you aren't familiar with his story, you know about this picture. That picture that was published in Harper Weekly for the world to see his severely beaten, keloid over, whipped up back. It woke up so many people, especially Northerners who really didn't know what slavery was or thought slaves were happy to do this labor and that they were treated fairly. This picture spoke volumes for people who did not have a voice at the time, and it demanded action be taken. Too bad that picture was a blimp on this movie's radar. Now, to start off, let's get into the writing, script, dialogue, plot, tone. Everything here provided by Bill Collage. Looking into his filmography and what he's written before, I really don't think he was the right person to handle this script or really have the capacity to flesh out a character like Peter. With someone like him and not a lot of information being known outside of what was left in that article underneath the photo of his back, there was an opportunity to go into many directions, and not all of them suited this movie, and a lot of them seemed like they were just to suit who Will Smith is as an actor. But the writing here was very inconsistent to me. The movie didn't know what it wanted to be exactly. It was, part slave movie, part freedom story, a love story. It wanted to be a full-blown war movie, and neither part of the script really spent any time building up any one of those sectors outside of the one of him being a runaway slave and his ability to endure. For this not to be a slave movie, we spent a lot of time in that portion and building up his character in that way. We repeatedly get to see all of Peter's technical skills. He's, a survivalist, he is resourceful, he has all this perseverance, but that can only take us so far in the script. The movie is lacking all around with every other characters, and even Peter in some aspects. Every character comes off as very shallow and one-dimensional, which makes the movie feel empty. I never got around to caring about what we were supposed to care about in this movie. Him getting back to his family. I never had an ounce of care for Peter's family, his wife and his children. There was absolutely no character development or any real time devoted to make you really feel for them beyond, oh, okay, they're slaves, so that should just be enough for us to want them to be together. Can we get to know them? Can we get invested in him as a husband, as a father? Hell, even as a slave. They were in such a rush to tell us that he is the exception and he is not like all of the other slaves. There will be no keeping his head down, being submissive, not talking back. He is a fighter. That's all good and dandy, but what are your children's names? What is your wife's name? I don't really know, but I do know that he's defiant. He doesn't really listen, and he might, rip the doors off the hinges if you try to take him away from his family. That's all visually great, but if the base of this is supposed to be, a love and a freedom story, I need to feel the love, and I ain't care about it. And the same can be said when we get into the villainy here in the film, the masters, the enslavers, and the main slaver, Ben Foster, that we follow the entire movie, who is trying his best to not only break Peter, but bring him back to the plantation that he is running away from. Terrible. Like, they literally gave all of our characters here absolutely nothing to work with. Nobody here really had a foundation. Of course, they are enslavers, so we're gonna make them despicable, but that's really as far as it goes. We were supposed to do stuff like listen to Ben Foster's tired ass story, what they tried to make a backstory by the campfire, or him just having this God complex and taking that ownership that he felt like he had over Peter as a slave, referring to himself as a god, referring to Peter as a dog, and it just did absolutely nothing. This movie was just so empty and was really solely a vehicle for Will Smith to be Peter. We were really just focusing on Will Smith becoming who he needed to be. We didn't really give two damns about any other characters within the movie. We were too busy through the writing making this movie part Glory, part Django, part Harriet, part 12 Years a Slave. It was just a whole gumbo of everything but what I really needed this movie to be. And then we get into the direction here from Antoine Fuqua. He is probably most known for his action movies, his Denzel movies, Magnificent Seven, movies like Southpaw, the Equalizer films, and of course, Training Day. Cinematically, I did enjoy many places that he decided to go with this film in several shots. I love the shots that we got of the slaves and the railroads at the very beginning of the movie. I love the shots that we got of the swamp. There is this serious, itchy, isolated, desperate feel that we get for Will as a runaway, and when he is hiding, you just feel this grit and this dirt from the way that he portrays the swamp. I also really enjoyed the war scenes at the very ending of the film. It reminded me of Glory. It was really impactful, and it was really visually stunning. I'm not going to take that away. Now, what I did not enjoy about his direction was the tint, the hue, and the lighting within this film. A lot of people are praising it and they love it, but for me, I either would have wanted, some really vibrant color, or I would have just wanted full-blown black and white. This movie is somewhere in between, and for me, it just washed everything and everybody out to where it was almost like you couldn't really see or make out what you were looking at. It made things extremely muggy, extremely dark, and extremely grimy, and I know what we were going for, especially with this being a slave movie. And it just defeated the purpose to me to have all these beautiful sets built. We have all of this great Louisiana swamp, all of these great scenarios where you would want to see more detail, but you can't make it out because everything is just so dark. And lastly, Will Smith here as Peter removed me from this movie for good or bad multiple times. This was totally a vehicle for him, and this was Oscar bait if I have ever seen any. This was not Will Smith portraying Peter to me. This was just Will Smith being Will Smith. And the writing in this movie has a strong hand in that. without them attaching things like him rubbing himself down with that onion and that brief moment that we do have of the photographer taking the picture of his back. This story could have been interchangeable with any other slave story. I felt like it was a cop-out to use Peter's story here, especially with people being familiar with the photograph, to pull in that audience when we really weren't going to focus on what made him a part of history, which was that photograph. This movie was tailored more so for Will Smith and not so much for Peter, in my opinion. We leave out things like Peter being beat so badly and through the healing process, deciding when and how he was going to run away, soaking himself in that onion so he could throw off the scent of those dogs, or even the fact that once he made his way to freedom and he joined the army, he was beaten yet again and left for dead. We don't really get into any of that because we are too busy crafting Peter to, be a certain likeness and get that Oscar. Why does Peter have an accent? Why is Peter Haitian or whatever else he was supposed to be representing here? Peter is, based in Louisiana. He was very much so a Black American, but here we have Will Smith portraying him with this very strong, inconsistent, tacky accent. Like, he was not pushing through. A lot of the characters surrounding him were not pushing through with their accents. It was just executed and laughable and taking me out. Outside of his wife, everybody else's accent was trash. And that's not to say that multiple races and cultures were enslaved, such as Haitians and so on and so forth, but Peter personally was a Black American. And then we get into the aspect of Will Smith or whomever feeling like this was not a slave movie. I feel like he felt that way because all of the slavery aesthetic that's happening isn't happening so much to him. It's happening to all the characters that are surrounding him. For this not to be a slave movie, we have a lot of slave activity going on. People are severely beaten. People are whipped. People are beheaded. People are ripped apart by dogs. There are, people are shot, close blank range. There is a lot of brutality going on to show that this is a slave movie, but it's only designated for our surrounding characters and not so much Will Smith, that gave him this whole ass plot armor in a slave movie. It was as if Will Smith as Peter could pretty much do and say whatever he wanted to in this movie without any real repercussions. It almost seems like he can do and say as he pleases. He is very reactive. He's extremely defiant, really opinionated for this time, and kind of goes unscathed beyond the act of running away. Now, even in the act of him running away, it's almost in the sense of, a hero. He's being attacked. He is fighting off men. He is escaping as he is being attacked. And not just that, he is very much so considered a leader here. He is constantly, looked up on with admiration. He is uplifted as a person. There is a desire to listen to him, follow him. He is filled with all of this wisdom, endurance, and personality that these other slaves just don't seem to possess to be able to survive in the aspect that he can. He is the exception. There is this whole heroic cape complex also with his character, because we constantly see him, saving, going out of his way. He's like physically uplifting and come on, like it's very much so in the vein of what we see from Will Smith in the roles that he takes on. And not to say that Peter wasn't any of these things. He had to be to endure a lot of the things that he did, but it did not feel like this movie was solely a vehicle to tell Peter's story. This was a vehicle to give Will Smith a platform to be a slave the way that he wanted to be a slave. At least that's what I thought. But you guys drop down and tell me what you thought about this movie. Do you plan to check this out? And if you have, please tell me what you thought about it and what you thought about my review. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you in the middle? I look forward to reading your comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share all of my good content because that helps me out. I see you guys next time for my next review. Bye.